Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Akil Ahmed, and I am a research intern at Institute of Chinese Studies, New Delhi. On behalf of Institute of Chinese Studies, I welcome you to today's Wednesday seminar titled Multiculturality and the Paradox of Multiculturalism in 21st Century Japan. This seminar examines the complexities of multiculturalism in contemporary Japan. For a long time, Japan has been perceived largely as a homogeneous society, with its people sharing a common history, culture, and language. The discussion will center on challenging this perception and exploring the paradoxes of multiculturalism in 21st century Japan. The speaker for today's seminar is Dr. Dharitri Narzari Chakravarti. She is Associate Professor and Director at Center for Research Method, Dr. Ambedkar University, New Delhi. Dr. Chakravarti received her PhD degree in Japanese Studies from Department of East Asian Studies, University of Delhi. Previously, she worked at the Yomiuri Shimbun Japanese newspaper in its India bureau at New Delhi. Her interest areas include center-periphery relation, multiculturalism, indigeneity, material culture, popular culture, education, society and religion, among others. She was also a part of International Institute for ASEAN Studies, led an project titled Humanities Across Borders to develop a curriculum on rice as a method. Currently, Dr. Chakravarti has been engaging with the study of northeast of India. Her recent publications are Concept of Placemaking and the Dobri Town 2024, The Awards of NEFA, A Historical Perspectives 2023. The chair for today's seminar is Professor Shabni Roy Chaudhary. She is a professor of Japanese Studies at Center for East Asian Studies, School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. With over three decades of professional engagement with Japan, she was awarded the Commendation for Promotion of Japanese Studies by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Tokyo, Japan in 2024. She has been visiting scholar at Policy Research Institute, Kobe University, Nagoya University, Kyoto University, and University of Navarra. She has to credit six edited volumes. She is currently a research fellow of Japan Foundation Indo-Pacific Fellowship. Before I hand over to the chair, I would like to ask all the participants to follow a few housekeeping rules. All participants shall be muted during the seminar. Question may be posted in the chat box along with your name and affiliation. Alternatively, you may use the raise your hand option during the interactive session. You shall then be called upon to unmute yourself. Thank you. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you, Ahmed. It is indeed nice of you to have a good introduction of the subject as well as the chair and the person who would be lecturing today. The subject of our concern today is very important in today's days and time because especially as Japan goes through a demographic transition, they're looking towards more immigration, and therefore the question of the fact that how far can Japan accept multiculturalism, as well as how does it perceive this whole subject. Today we have with us Dharitri Chakravarti, who has been working on this subject for a long time. And she has, not only looked at it from the point of view of migration, but also with respect to how Japan, which for a long time, as it was told right just now, that considered a very homogeneous society, how she's also looked into the fact that how it is not truly an homogeneous society. So therefore it would be interesting for us to have give a detailed lecture on how this whole multiculturalism is looked upon by Japan, both I'm sure both from the policy aspect as well as from the point of view of the policymakers and the society in general. Over to you, Dharitri. You're using PPT, right?
Yes, yes.
And whoever is handling the PPT. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Professor Shravani and Akhil, for that introduction. And coming to ICS is always like a homecoming for me because I have been associated with ICS. In fact, I can say I began my academic career with ICS when I just started as a PhD student. So thank you so much, ICS, and Professor Alka, for reaching out to me. And I'm very happy to share some of my ideas, though this is not yet a very in-depth kind of a research project, but something which I have been working on and following up, sort of. So without further delay, I will just go on to my presentation. And the PPT is a reference purpose, for the reference purpose, and I'll be reading out my presentation for this talk. So the topic, multiculturality and the paradox of multiculturalism in 21st century Japan. It's something I find always very fascinating, actually, the idea of multiculturalism. The current studies on Japan have given, if we look at the trend, much focus on the close link between the country's foreign policy and its economic health, which is more like, current affairs studies or contemporary studies kind of a thing. So it is in this context that I'm trying to situate the contemporary issues and challenges faced by the Japanese society and the state, which I see as inherently historical. Like already introduced, for a long time, Japan has been perceived as a country that is largely homogeneous and people sharing common history, language, and culture. So historically, this shared commonality was seen as an important factor in fostering a sense of commitment to national development, especially since the Meiji period. The founding of the modern nation state of Japan in 1868 saw the ideological propagation of one nation, one culture, from where began the intensive process of Japanese identity creation. I say creation because it was a top-down initiative and very state-centric and state-driven, which initiated from primary institutions like schools. In fact, the resurrection of Japan as an Asian economy after the devastation from Second World War was largely attributed to the cohesiveness of Japanese society, which was achieved through consciously calculated developmental policies embedded in the social structure that had started with the Meiji Restoration. However, since the turn of the century, one sees an increase in the scholarship on multicultural Japan. Interestingly, even as this shift is owing to the demographic change that the country is undergoing, consequential to the decline in birth rate and increase in aging population, the concept of multiculturalism and how it is approached in Japan is a contested topic within and outside Japan. As a historian, my interest largely lies on the historical processes that shape the Japanese society. This I would like to understand by going back in time to see what kind of policy matters were put into place in the making of a modern Japan vis-a-vis the multiculturality aspect of the country. Here I take 1869 actually as a turning point in the making of a homogeneous Japan, when the policy of assimilation was brought in to assimilate the Ainu people of Hokkaido, who are culturally different from the Yamato Japanese. I'm just looking at it. It is therefore a matter of debate as to whether Japan can be considered homogeneous or not. But revisiting assimilation policy of the Meiji regime becomes necessary to understand the cultural discourse of Japan. This policy was to transform the indigenous Ainu into becoming a Japanese, what can be called Japanization of the Ainu, by introducing them to the Japanese-style education, making learning of Japanese language compulsory, imposing practice of Japanese lifeways, particularly by regulating livelihood practices like hunting, fishing, and foraging, and imposing agriculture. To ensure that modern Japan would only have an advanced Yamato race, the official intellectuals of Meiji Japan propagated intermarriage between the Ainu and Japanese settlers so that there would be no Ainu race left in the future. The fact that official count of Ainu in Japan today is less than 20,000 is indicative of that. The idea was to remove all differences and make the Ainu into a complete Japanese, physically and mentally. Such a policy was to promote monoculture inherently, which was to be extended later to Japan's acquired territories and colonies in the neighboring regions of Okinawa, Taiwan, and Korean Peninsula as well. The introduction of assimilation policy saw emergence of a cultural discourse that was to project Yamato or Japanese as a superior race as opposed to the weakling or the dying Ainu race, which was to have a resonating effect on the nature and character of Japan as a modern nation state. Such intellectual debates and discussions of the time foregrounded the political discourse around the Japanese notion of nationhood and nationalism to promote the concept of Tanitsu Minzoku Kokka, that is, single ethnic nation state, an antithesis to multiculturalism, particularly in the context of denying cultural rights by imposing Japanese culture. I would say that the concept of one nation, one culture gained momentum with the 1869 assimilation policy, the tenets of which were to influence not only the societal and cultural mentality of Japan, but also the state foreign policy in one way or the other in times to come, even as the policy itself disappeared into oblivion during the course of pre-war and post-war history. Scholars like Oguma Aiji, a historical sociologist, has remained critical of the Tanitsu Bunka, the monocultural concept, to highlight the conscious omission or non-recognition of the historical presence of cultural groups such as the Ainu, Ryukyuans or Okinawans, Chinese, Koreans, as well as the social outcasts, the Burakumin, insisting that Japan was always multicultural. Similarly, John Mayer, Harumi Beifu, and Michael Wiener have also highlighted the multiculturality of Japan. But whether multicultural Japan is also practicing multiculturalism is something that remains a subject of discussion. Even as these scholars have critiqued the idea of Japan as monocultural, the representation of Japan as having a unique culture that defined the country also emerged within Japan, which gained momentum as Nihonjinron. While there is no one way of explaining what is Nihonjinron, it became a convenient tool to express Japanese-ness in binary opposition to the others. The Nihonjinron discourse is critiqued as non-coherent by scholars, as not related to any particular knowledge system. On the other hand, there is a clear understanding and differentiation of cultural demarcations in Japan, which Nihonjinron makes it easy for the state to categorize non-Japanese. In the official record of non-Japanese population, there's a clear marking that one category, there are three categories which stand out. One category is that of the historical minority considered totally assimilated as Japanese, like the Ainu, the Ryukyuans or Okinawans, and the Burakumin. However, the examples of discrimination experienced by these categories clearly indicates the inherent problem of multiculturality. The second category is the naturalized minority, mainly the Chinese and Zainichi Korean or the Koreans who arrived before the Second World War and are the long-term residents of Japan. Having lived in Japan for generations as naturalized citizens, They adopted Japanese names as Japanese citizens, but most are yet to get voting rights with no political representation. The third category comprises of all foreigners in Japan, the gaijin or the alien, including the Nikkeijin, who are the descendants of Japanese diaspora, especially those who emigrated to South America since Meiji period. Though Nikkeijin maintain close cultural connect with Japan in their adopted countries, there is a clear distinction between Nihonjin and Nikkeijin. So from 1990s onwards, the writings on multicultural Japan became visible, and it is understandable given the sudden increase in the number of foreigners arriving in Japan. The contradiction in cultural discourse within Japan can be linked with the historical debates around national identity. The emperor-centric political ideology institutionalized during the Meiji era was with an objective to create a unique country based on a unique national culture for which becoming Japanese was essential. This process of becoming Japanese started early from elementary school level, and one can see little change in the approach even in contemporary times. For instance, teaching Japanese language in schools as national language or kokugo to the Japanese children was conceptualized as a part of the political ideology to inculcate the sense of being Japanese as a member of Minzoku, the term used to refer to the ethnic nation, the Yamato nation, who must be proficient in identifying the self as Japanese, while foreigners would learn Japanese as Nihongo or Japanese language. There is a clear distinction in the ways Japanese is being taught as Kokugo, national language, and Nihongo or Japanese language, both having their assigned roles with set purposes. In that, Kokugo is an expression of linguistic and cultural sentiment representing the national sentiment. Language does continue to occupy a prominent role in Japan's national education policy. Likewise, language is also an important aspect of Japanese foreign policy, especially when we look at the history of Japan's internationalization. The idea was born with the enthronement of Meiji Emperor, and through the Charter Oath, it was declared that knowledge be sought throughout the world to be at par with the Western world. To achieve this, the framers of modern Japan sent study missions across the Western world, invited foreign experts and scientists from Europe and America to train in scientific and technological know-how and in public institution building. It was the first phase of internationalization, but with a heavy inclination towards westernization, which can be considered as part of Fukuzawa Yukichi's Datsu Ron or Leave Asia discourse. Such an ideology in varying forms prevailed till the Second World War. Though there is no direct link between the emergent cultural discourse and Japan's internationalization during the pre-war period, it indirectly contributed in shaping the way Japan approached the global world. On the other hand, the shift in this approach of engaging with the global world to seek parity was induced by the war experience and the implications it had on the national image of Japan, which has been studied well in the post-war scholarship. The second phase of internationalization was mainly confined to the post-war Reconstruction concerns during the American occupation that focused on demilitarization and democratization, which was heavily influenced by the US. It was in the third phase after the occupation that Japan opened up to the world, including Asia. I'll just like the person handling PPT to move on a little bit. Yeah. Right. So, including Asia, which marked a distinct shift in its foreign policy to promote its global image as an industrialized and economically developed nation with a rich cultural heritage. The official public diplomacy emphasized importance of cultural exchange to internationalize itself through introduction of Japanese culture globally, Japanese language education, and offering scholarship to foreign students to study in the universities of Japan. One of the examples of institutionalizing such an outreach effort is the establishment of the Japan Foundation in 1972. We can go to the next slide, under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The rapid economic growth from the early 1970s to early 1990s drew the global attention to Japan, which in turn saw steady increase in the number of foreigners arriving in Japan to look for opportunities, mainly from the developing Asian countries. The Japanese Foreign Ministry had conducted a survey in 1978 in some of the Asian countries like Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, and Singapore to assess their attitude towards Japan. And some of the favorable responses reflected the image of Japan as economically advanced, high standard of living, high level of culture, hardworking, and polite society. The survey revealed that the anti-Japanese feeling due to Japan's role in the Great War was waning in these countries post-decolonization as a result of Japan's internationalization zeal, particularly through the development aids extended by Japan in Asia, which helped positive public opinion within Japan as well. Apart from economy, the educational and cultural exchange programs opened opportunities for developing countries to study and work in Japan. Among the top source educational markets in contemporary times are China, Nepal, Philippines, Vietnam, Myanmar, and South Korea. And it has been the Japanese government encouraging higher educational institutions to bring more foreign talents, especially in view of the declining workforce, as well as to maintain the enrollment in universities. Among the foreigners, substantial number included people of Japanese descent from South America, mainly Brazil, the Nikkeizin, as mentioned earlier, a term which helped to differentiate them from the Japanese. The economic boom of 1980s saw large number of Nikkeizin arriving in Japan, looking for better opportunities as well as to trace their ancestral roots. Even as the economy slowed down in 90s, the inflow of foreigners, including Nikkeizin, continued to grow. The fact that the Japanese government revisited the Immigration Control and Refugee Recognition Act in 1990 to accommodate the increasing number of Nikkeizin shows the preferential approach of the state towards the Japanese descent as migrant workers. On the other hand, the revision of the act made immigration of the formal unskilled labor stricter. But the act had provision for foreign workers to enter Japan as informal workers, especially in the areas of the 3K works, that is, kitsui, difficult, kitanai, dirty or polluting, and kiken, dangerous, that historically were left for the others to do, like the outcast Purakumin, the Koreans, and even Ainu. Since 1993, Japan received foreign workers under the Technical Intern Training Program, which allowed foreign nationals to live and work in Japan for 3 to 4 years. Induced by the steady decline in the national working population and the increasing older population by the turn of the century, Japan allowed foreigners to enter the country to fill in such workforce under such programs. So foreigners who arrived in Japan after 1980s have been categorized as newcomers, as opposed to the old comers like Koreans and Chinese from earlier times. And among the later generation of newcomers, especially the ones from China and Korea, they have been identified typically as belonging to middle or upper middle class in their home country, and different from the oldcomers who arrived earlier as menial workers mainly. So in view of a dynamic change in the demography, it is not only the state which finds it challenging to address the issues related to immigration, but also the way Japanese society in general responds to the change. Yeah, maybe you can change the PPT also. This is the graph I have taken from the Japan Student Services Organization, which shows the steady inflow of foreign students into Japan, and who most of whom also stay on to work in Japan. So if we look at the Japanese census, if you can go to the next PPT. The next one, yes. If we look at the Japanese census, which is conducted every 5 years, and the latest census was conducted in 2025 between September and October, the enumeration includes both national citizens and all foreign residents. The reason for including every foreigner living in Japan beyond 3 months period at the time of survey, as claimed in the official document, is to provide better living environment and disaster management rather than using it for surveillance, immigration, or other such purposes. As per the census, there are about 3% foreign nationals in Japan as against 97% Japanese nationals. However, in the popular imagination of the Japanese people, the percentage varies between 10 to 40%, which is big, and this perception is due to the concentration of foreign nationals in big cities like Tokyo or Osaka. Of course, the visibility is also because of the increase in the number of foreign tourists in Japan. Many Japanese also fear the presence, because of the presence of visible foreigners. Many Japanese also fear losing their job to the migrant or foreign workers, though there is no clear data on such speculations. When one analyzes the concern of the ordinary Japanese related to the presence of foreigners or the non-Japanese in Japan, it is possible to draw a link with the Nihonjin-ron discourse. The general sentiment is the fear about dilution of Japanese culture, Japanese way of life, Japanese orderliness, which is built over centuries, and the anxiety of losing it. The public sentiment, no matter how skewed it may be, has in some way provided the local or even ruling political parties an issue, as can be also seen in the recent stance taken by the current Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi, linking orderly coexistence with tighter immigration policy to address the foreigners' problem. Or one can read it as a shift in the state's perception. The latest policy, which came about in January 2026, titled Comprehensive Measures, you can move the PPT maybe, titled Comprehensive Measures for Accepting Foreign Nationals and Orderly Coexistence, replaces the 2018 guidelines for specified skills program as per the revision in the Immigration Control and Refugee Recognition Act. The specified skilled workers, which is known as SSW, listed under the Special Skills Program since 2019, had opened doors for many low-skilled workers, especially from countries like India, Bangladesh, Nepal, to find work as agricultural labor in rural Japan. The term orderly coexistence is used to represent government's approach towards integration of foreign nationals through language training and providing educational or vocational assistance to their children. While this framework is meant to integrate foreign nationals into Japanese society, it doesn't have the essentials to promote multiculturalism, as can be observed. Multiculturalism, I would say, as a concept and ideology, promotes not only mutual understanding, acknowledgement, and recognition of the other, but it also signifies acceptance of and intermingling with the other. In another sense, allowing the other to feel at home that can help achieve optimum out of the coexistence. The Japanese term tabunka kyosei, which literally means many cultures living together harmoniously, originated in 1990s as a result of local mobilizations to address the inequalities faced by foreign workers, particularly the Koreans. The term was later formalized as part of the government policy to promote coexistence. However, I would like to also move towards concluding the presentation. The term is limiting in nature because it focuses more on teaching foreigners to live like the Japanese. The Japanese society believe in conformity and uniformity, and thus non-Japanese cultures not conforming to the expected norms remain outside the structure of Japanese culture, unable to fit in. This leads to insularization of culture, creating insular pockets, making the boundaries more distinct. This could be one of the reasons why ethnically and culturally closer migrants like the Chinese, Koreans, and Southeast Asians are considered more acceptable. Um, in recent times, at least, uh, um, two states from the northeast of India have seen training of young aspirants through the technical intern training program in collaboration with the National Skill Development Corporation to work in Japan. Such initiatives indicate the direction of Japanese multiculturalism to address the problem of economic slowdown with the help of foreign workers, while at the same time, it also is trying to preserve the Japanese cultural landscapes. So I have just in the PPT two small videos in the last slide. If you move to the next slide, which maybe can be played. For instance, how Northeast is entering in the Japanese framework or Japanese imagination. Recently, I found out that Nagaland University is offering certificate course in Japanese language, and there are efforts being made not only by individuals, but also these are more institutional kind of institutionalized collaborations to hire more people from northeast of India, which I found was really something interesting. And maybe we can get a sense of it when we look at the video. If somebody can play it, maybe. These are short videos.
Whoever is handling the slides, can you please move?
Yeah.
Can you just use the PPT?
You can just control and
yeah, I mean, just, yeah, I think even if you,
are you able to play it?
We are trying, ma'am.
Okay.
It's not working properly, I think.
You can just press
Paste it.
control and click on the link.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. It's not working.
No, ma'am, it's not working properly.
Can't you copy paste it into the YouTube and see? Is
Okay.
it possible?
Or maybe I can share it. I don't know.
Yeah, if you're given the sharing,
Yes. Just press Control and click on the link given. Then it will open in YouTube, I think.
Ma'am, it's not working. So we can share the link in the group if possible, so that participant can watch it later.
no, but if you allow ma'am to show, then she can, if you sort of allow ma'am to share, then she can share from her laptop, right?
Hmm.
Ma'am, you are already co-host. You can directly share it on your screen in that.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
What you need to do is, yeah.
Let me. Okay, I am sharing the same thing, but let me see if I can just sort of. Is it visible to all? Is the screen not visible to you?
Screen is visible, but we are seeing the last slide of your presentation. We're
Oh,
not seeing anything.
just a moment then.
Dharitri, go to the YouTube
Huh.
and copy paste the link so that you can see it. You can show it to us.
Okay. Just a second. Let me do it. Actually, that's what I did. Now, if I have to copy paste it,
Ma'am, wait for a moment. Akshat sir is sharing the screen.
Okay.
YouTube. Okay.
okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Link is not working. Play.
Yeah, according to Partha, the link is not working.
Well, it seems to be working. I can see a slide.
No, now this is thing. But why can't we get the volume?
Hmm.
Akshay, volume.
There is no option for sharing the window, right? In Zoom. Or if we go to the share the Google Chrome which shows on the screen. This is actually the school which is running in the, Arms Incorporation, which is set up in Nagaland, and it's gaining a lot of popularity actually, I think, in Northeast. And there was another link which is an official talking about preference given to a region like Northeast by Japan nowadays for hiring purposes to work in Japan, and which clearly says that there is a preference given to people, particularly from Northeast, because of the commonality in terms of how they look, and it's like there's some kind of a cultural similarity, which is why they are looking for migrants who are from that kind of a cultural background. So clearly, like Japan is definitely rethinking about multiculturalism, and it is redefining what multiculturalism is. And though it is already a multicultural society, but then how much multicultural it is in real sense is something which has been always discussed. So I think with those words, I would just close my presentation. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Dhartri. Um, there is one question by Ambassador Rana, and let's see, we can start with that. Ahmed, yeah.
Yeah. So one question is from Kishan S. Rana. Could you please elaborate how Nepal has what appear to be around 10% of the foreigners? This is the questions, and he seeks apology for not miss the earlier part.
Why is Nepal a larger community of Nepalis in Japan? 10% of the foreigners is Nepalis. What is the reason behind it? Dhartri, you're muted.
Okay. I don't know if the PPT on the distribution of foreigners was shared there in a circular kind of this thing. Yeah. So my presentation did not say that, why is it that there is a 10%? The perception was the Japanese have a perception that the foreigners in Japan are between 10 to 40%. And whereas the actual percentage is, as per the official record, 3%. There are approximately 3% foreigners in Japan, and the recent trend shows that a good number of Nepalese are going to Japan to work and for studies. So among the South Asians, Nepal kind of stands out as newcomers in Japan. So if you could elaborate a little bit more on the question, if you, Ambassador Rana, if
I think also, going forward with the same question, why more Nepalis? Nepal had a agreement with Japan in the 1990s when for education as well as for skilled, not skilled worker, but education and work permits were much more liberally given to Nepal under this agreement, which enabled more Nepalese to go there first as students of language and subsequently an attempt to stay back. And Ambassador Rana, you've raised your hands. You can go forward with your question.
Sir, you are co-host now. You can unmute
Thank
yourself.
you. Thank you very much. I'm obliged to you for taking up this question. And I think you hinted in the part of the talk that I did catch that Japan favors people with an ethnicity which appears to resemble their own. I can well understand that because Japan is a very tightly integrated society and they have their own particular worldview of ethnicity. But I'm just intrigued that as much as 10% of the foreigners in Japan, and that's not a very big number, happen to be of Nepalese origin. And I wonder if your research study has thrown any light on that. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you, Ambassador Rana, for that question. Well, I did not look at the bilateral relations. What Professor Shravani was indicating that it is because of the agreement between Japan and Nepal, which is one of the reasons I can understand that perhaps pushed more Nepalese to go to Japan as students or workers. But definitely, I think the policies that is taken up by Japanese government, I see it as a more selective kind of an approach when they are going ahead with such kind of policies. That is why I actually wanted to show that video where an official statement which says that we are looking towards Northeast because of ethnicity and because of cultural similarity and things like that. So considering that, it becomes apparent that Japan is looking towards countries which is similar in the way what you are also saying, that which reduces the possibility of this starkness, where the foreigners look too foreign, and so those kinds of, whether the bilateral relations vis-a-vis bringing in workers, foreign talents to the country is connected with that, is something is worth considering. And since I have looked at this aspect of multiculturalism more from the societal kind of a perception, I did not look really into the bilateral kind of relations per se, but which is where I think I should also be looking at now.
Well, thank you very much, ma'am. I think you have responded to my question very adequately. But I do wish to suggest that this is a theme worth examination. Thank you
Yes.
very much.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Another question is from Partha Mukhopadhyay. The question is, on conformity, how does the Japanese society integrate phenomena like anime?
How does the Japanese society integrate phenomena like
Anime.
anime? Japanese society integrate phenomena like anime. I am trying to understand the question, actually. If you could be more clear about it. Is it possible to give them the right to speak, sort of?
I think
Yes,
he's
sir.
already given. Yeah.
Sir, you have co-host now.
Partho,
You can unmute yourself.
Okay, all right.
anime not
You're
being non-conformist.
non-conformist. Yeah. I think this whole thing about anime is a totally different world, in Japan, because it is also it's a popular culture, but it is also about imagining a world within Japanese world, kind of a thing. And while we may look at anime or mangas as non-conformist to the Japanese values, traditions, or whatever, but at the same time, within the genre, there is kind of a conformity. That is why Japanese anime stands out, for instance. And these are the animes, on the other hand, there are also animes which reflect Japanese cultural psychology. Actually, there are different genres of anime which are very, very reflective of um, uh, um, how through these popular culture, the makers of the anime are also trying to posit the heritage, the values, the tradition of Japan. And I think it's about how Japanese uh, um, how Japanese want to present themselves as unique is also something which come out through the anime. So while it may look like non-conformist, but at the same time, I find them more conforming, in terms of the way there is a representation that is happening in anime as unique kind of a thing. So I don't know if I'm answering your question. Is religion a factor with regard to official approval or disapproval of the potential migrants? Yeah, thank you, ma'am, for asking that question. Yes, I think religion somewhere is one factor which is especially now beginning to appear as one of the reasons why there are apprehensions also in relation to uh, uh, who should be allowed to come or who should come, like that. And especially recently, I was reading, for instance, that there is a sizable number of, say, for example, people coming from Islamic faith and who have lived in Japan, especially if you look at from Pakistan, Bangladesh, and even Middle East and Egypt. The Muslim population, one of the reasons they find a problem is how Japan is not very open to, say, for example, allowing them to have, say, their own burial grounds. And recently also there have been a lot of discussions around having their own places for worship, kind of a thing. So there is definitely this aspect also, in approving or disapproving the potential migrants to Japan. So religion definitely is beginning to play its own, part in that kind of a official decision, perhaps. Because many of these the graveyards are like, official spaces. They are also, run by the, local governments. So they're having problem in giving space to people coming particularly from that religious background. Yes,
Yeah, Alka.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks, Dharitri. It was very interesting, particularly because I think this question of how multicultural societies are now experiencing these tensions which prevent, a smooth kind of blending and unity in diversity concept. I mean, these are issues which are arising all over the world. And now, what I would like to know, I mean, this is purely very, very basic question, but something that is I'm curious about. What is the debate inside Japan? Are there any sections now who say that, look, we need to see the writing on the wall? This is a declining graph. And the sooner we start to think differently, and the sooner we start to move out of these set patterns, which are, preventing very constructive kind of policies about migration or naturalizing or giving citizenship. I mean, these are questions which will have to be tackled sooner or later. I want to know whether there is anything at all among scholars which is actually taking a much more radical path than just the conformist kind of position.
Interestingly, actually, the within Japan, while academics and particularly academics are writing on this particular issue and problem, and majority of the writings actually are coming from people who are following the economy of Japan, and where they are bringing in the aspect of multiculturalism also, So on one hand, there is obviously this anxiety of not having enough workers, but at the same time, they are also there is a realization that Japanese economy will definitely need foreign workers, foreign talents to sustain. But on the other hand, there is a clear anxiety among general population about the increase in the number of foreigners. And while not everybody is very clearly voicing out, like, that Japan should open up, there should be more acceptance of the foreigners, there should be better integration. But what should be the nature of that integration? There's hardly anybody really discussing about it. And it's only like, which is where I think government is also taking its own decisions based on popular sentiment that is visible, and not really coming from either intellectuals or academics, or people who are sort of influencing decisions making or policy makers, but rather on the surface of it, it is more like a populist kind of a approach that government is also taking. But within Japan, there isn't, therefore, very clear kind of a discussion. So seems to be a lot of divide within Japan as to how Japan should respond to the problem of foreigners, and the very fact that foreigners are seen as problem, and because officially also they talk about addressing foreigners' problem, means like seeing foreigners as problem. So so therefore it's very difficult actually to make a clear sense of which way it is going. But definitely they are rethinking about it, how these problems should be addressed. How what does coexistence means? Coexistence which has already been there for from before. Different cultural groups have lived in Japan, but then it's about coexistence in real sense, which is, I think, what we call multiculturalism, in that sense. So nobody is talking about that actually. So I find it a little vague also at the same time, but it has definitely to do with the cultural psychology of the society, where there is a lot of resistance to any kind of a drastic change in the set pattern of everydayness, and the way people engage with each other. So the fear of losing the identity, this unique identity of being a Japanese is something which is what I see it as. I don't know.
May I jump in a
No,
bit?
Thank you. I think that's fascinating. I mean, that's precisely the tension I was seeking. That I was wanting to know whether it exists, and thank you. You pointed out to that tension.
Let me jump in a little on this aspect
Yeah.
of problem and thing. If you look at it in Japan for the last two elections, migration and foreign work, people living in Japan has become a kind of a propaganda for a set of parties, which is the rightist parties in Japan, to put forward that they will not want any migration to happen. Two things have been pointed out to the Japanese society by these political parties. One is that there's a lot of increase in crime rates, and many of the crime rates, especially against women, have originated by the foreign migrants. This is one. And the other thing that has been pointed out is that there are anyway lesser jobs, and those jobs are being taken by the migrant population. On the other side of the same migration policy is actually encouraging the higher order skilled workers to come in, including India. So they are really trying to, cherry pick a set of people who would be important for the country in its demographic slide, and not allow for a very open kind of a migration to happen. This is, I think, one thing that takeaway one can see from what the migration policies are looking at. But what is also very important and interesting is that, I think Patricia ma'am has just raised that question in her chat box, saying attitude towards intermarriage and culture. In spite of the fact that Japan now allows foreign workers who have stayed on for more than 10 years to become permanent residents of Japan, and it's become a very easy route. If you spent 10 years, you just have to make an application within 3 days to 5 days. They give you your permanency. So you do not have to go after 3 years to renew your what they used to call the alien registration card. Now they've changed it a little to say coexistence card. So that has changed. That policy has changed. So that has made things easier for people who've staying for a longer period of time. But fresh immigration still continues to be very strongly positioned towards cherry picking the skilled workers who Japan feels that there is a need for. Even their Society 5.0 to 6.0, now they're calling it. Society 6.0 is, the debate is more on how much more robotics can be placed within the the new set of technologies that are going to be used, especially in healthcare, etc. How much more robotics can replace human beings rather than seeking migration from other countries. So it's a very different kind of a complex situation that Japan is getting into with respect to its demographic slide and the way they want to use robotics and where they would want to have the immigrant population. Dharitri, you would like to answer ma'am's question about interrace?
Yeah. Yes, you have already mentioned a couple of things. Attitudes to intermarriages between Japanese and other races. Intermarriage, it has been there, intermarriage in Japan, and socially and culturally, if we see the trend, intermarriage between, say, Chinese and Japanese, Chinese women and Japanese men was already happening from way before, and Koreans also. And there is a, while the attitude of the society is not really very negative, but it is also often linked, especially by people who do, say, gender studies and family studies and all, sociologists particularly. They look at it from the point of view of the status of women in Japan, for instance. How it is because Japanese women are finding it very difficult to manage family and work. Therefore, they would rather prefer not to get married. And this is where that, Japanese men particularly end up marrying the, foreign women, especially from China and Korea. However, on the other hand, Japanese women preferring to marry, say, Westerners is also discussed a lot by several of the other people who believe that marrying with Westerners gives them more space to manage themselves as women in Japanese society, with shared responsibility of upbringing children, and at the same time also getting opportunity to also pursue their own career at times. So intermarriage between Japanese and other races is quite subjective in that sense, I would say. Though Japanese would prefer to marry within, but at the same time, it is the traditional uh, social ideals which prevent many Japanese women from going ahead with marriage also. And this is where I think intermarriage is, it's taken not as negatively, but yeah, I don't know if I have answered that question.
So, ma'am, there is no more question in the chat box. Oh,
Mm.
there is one question from
About
Akshat.
Japanese and Japan.
So another question from Akshat Maine. Thank you for the presentation, ma'am. In Taiwan, the people have highly favorable opinion about the Japanese and Japan overall. Would you say that this is a reciprocal feeling among the Japanese? If so, what could be the sum of the reasons for this, even though Japan and Taiwan share a colonized relationship? Thank you.
Uh, I mean, from historical point of view, what I can say is that definitely the Japanese have also a more positive kind of an attitude towards the Taiwanese, and this is obviously I would understand from the political dynamics, and also their cultural kind of a familiarity as a colony of Japan in the past. How Taiwan also went through the assimilation policy, in the past, and so people are more familiar with Japanese culture in Taiwan, and this is one of the reasons, perhaps, despite, and also Taiwanese get perhaps more kind of a warm, more reciprocal kind of a response from the Japanese. It's more mutual in that sense, I would say.
Okay, ma'am.
Yes.
There is no more questions in the chat box.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I seek your permission to formally bring to an end of today's seminar.
Mm.
Yeah, I think we had a very interesting discussion today, a subject which is formulating itself in many dimensions. And as Dharitri really points out, that while there is a societal concern, there is a policy making issues, as well as, bilateral agreements that have often allowed for certain changes that could take place because two governments have decided on certain things. All these, as has been pointed out by even Ambassador Rana as well as Professor Alka Acharya, can be a question of larger query in your research in future. This is exactly what ICS wants to promote young scholars to bump off their ideas and try to see where they can take forward with respect to their research. Over to you, Amit. You can go forward to close the session.
Yeah.
With these, we
Thank you,
welcome.
Shrabani.
With these, we welcome to the end of today's seminar. We thank Dr. Chakravarti and Professor Roy Chaudhary for gracing today's seminar with their presence and for giving us their precious time. We also thank the audience for joining us today. The video of today's seminar shall be available on the ICS YouTube channel. We extend our warm invitation to all for upcoming Wednesday seminar titled Golden Promises, Strategic Strings, CPEC in the Long Shadows of She's Development Initiative, scheduled for 1st April 2026 at 3 p.m. IST. Details about the event can be found on the ICS website, or you can subscribe to our newsletter for regular update. Thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thank you, Dharitri. Thanks a lot. And thank you, Shrabani, for turning up despite your seasonal or viral or whatever indisposition it is. But hope you get well soon. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Alka.